What's a guy like you doing in a suit? Stole it, right? Detective Marcus Kane's words cut through the quiet courtroom like a knife. He pointed his finger at a black man standing near the defense table. The man wore a nice navy blue suit and carried a briefcase. Kane's hand dropped to his belt right next to his police badge. He was ready for trouble. The man didn't react. He didn't look scared. He didn't look angry. He just stood there, calm as ice, and stared right back at Kane. His face showed nothing but cold observation. The bailiff's face turned white. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Kane turned to his partner, Rodriguez, and smirked. "Look at this," he said loudly. "No lawyer again. These guys never bring lawyers." He raised his voice even more and pointed at the man. "Defense table. Sit down. Now." Rodriguez grabbed Kane's arm. "Marcus, stop!" he whispered urgently. Kane pulled his arm away. "Stop what?" he asked, confused. What Kane didn't know was about to destroy everything. The man wasn't a defendant. He wasn't a criminal. He was Judge James Carter, and what happened in the next 7 minutes would end Kane's 15-year career forever. But let's go back. 6 hours earlier, everything was different. 6 hours earlier, Detective Marcus Kane walked into a different courtroom with total confidence. He stood tall, shoulders back, completely sure he would win. He always won. The morning sun came through the tall windows. Kane fixed his tie as he walked to the witness stand. 15 years as a police officer. Over 200 arrests, awards and certificates covering his office walls. Prosecutors loved him. Defense lawyers were scared of him. Judges trusted him. Today's case seemed easy. A young black man named Terrence Williams, 23 years old, was charged with drug dealing. Kane had arrested him 3 weeks ago during what he called routine patrol in a high-crime neighborhood. The prosecutor, Davidson, smiled as Kane sat down in the witness chair. "Detective Kane, please state your name and rank." "Detective Marcus Kane, 15th Precinct, 15 years of service." "How many arrests in your career?" 247 as of last month. Judge Morrison, an elderly white man with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded with approval. Kane had testified in his courtroom dozens of times before. Davidson continued. "Describe what happened on March 14th. Kane turned toward the jury. Eye contact. Look sincere. These were the rules he knew by heart. "I was on patrol with Officer Rodriguez in the Hillside District. That's a known high-crime area. At 3:15 p.m., I saw the defendant on the corner of Hillside and Monroe." "What caught your attention?" "Suspicious behavior. He was looking around nervously, checking his phone over and over, watching the street. That's what drug dealers do. They're waiting for customers. They're watching for police." "What happened next?" "I saw the defendant reach into his jacket and hand something to another person. Quick exchange. The other person walked away fast. Based on my training, I knew this was a drug deal." In the back of the courtroom, Terrence's mother sat with her hands pressed together. Her knuckles were white. Her eyes were red from crying. "What did you do?" Davidson asked. "Rodriguez and I approached to do a lawful stop. I identified myself as police and asked him to show his hands." "How did Mr. Williams respond?" Kane's face got harder. "Immediately aggressive. Started backing away, shouting. Reached toward his pocket. The same pocket from the drug transaction." "What did you do?" "I feared for my safety." When a suspect reaches for their pocket during a confrontation, we have to assume they might have a weapon. I ordered him to the ground. When he resisted, I used necessary force." "What did you find?" "A plastic bag with about 30 grams of cocaine in his right jacket pocket. Also, $340 in small bills. That's typical for drug sales." Davidson nodded. "In 15 years, how many drug arrests have you made?" 80 to 90. "I've worked special drug details. I know what drug activity looks like." No further questions. Judge Morrison looked at the defense table. A young black woman named Shanice Coleman stood up. She was a public defender with dark circles under her eyes and a huge stack of files. She probably had 30 other cases to worry about. "Miss Coleman," the judge said. She walked forward, flipping through her notes. "Detective Kane, you said you saw Mr. Williams at 3:15 p.m., correct?" "Correct." From your patrol car? Yes. How far away? 50, 60 feet. You clearly saw a drug transaction from that distance? Yes, 20/20 vision. Your partner saw this too? Kane glanced toward Rodriguez in the back. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Yes, he confirmed what I saw. Can we see your body camera footage? A quick look crossed Kane's face. Unfortunately, there was a technical problem. The camera wasn't recording. A technical problem. Technology fails. It happens. How often does your camera malfunction? Objection. Relevance. Davidson stood up. I'm establishing credibility, Your Honor, Coleman said. Judge Morrison waved his hand. I'll allow it. Move along, Miss Coleman. Detective, your body camera has had problems 17 times in 2 years. The department average is 4. Can you explain that? Kane's jaw got tight. I'm in the field more than most officers. More patrol time means more equipment failures. I report every problem following protocol. You report them after arrests. That's when I discover them. I check my equipment before shifts, but problems happen during operations. Isn't it policy to verify recording before taking enforcement actions? In ideal situations. But when you're responding to criminal behavior, you don't always have time. Officer safety comes first. Coleman paused. You said Mr. Williams was aggressive. Very aggressive. But there's no video of this aggressive behavior. Correct, due to the malfunction. The photos show Mr. Williams with a broken nose, cuts on his face, bruising on both arms. That's necessary force? When a suspect resists, when they reach toward their pocket in a threatening way, we stop the threat quickly. Mr. Williams chose to resist. These are the consequences. The cross-examination continued, but Coleman had no real power. Public defenders rarely did. No time for deep investigations. No money for experts. No ability to get buried complaint files. No further questions. Kane stepped down. His confidence was back. He'd handled worse. Coleman landed some light punches, but nothing that would change Morrison's mind. What Kane didn't know was that in another courtroom, someone had been waiting 8 months for this moment. Someone who'd watched Kane's pattern from a federal judge's bench and stepped down just to be here. Someone who'd reviewed every complaint, every buried report, every camera malfunction. Someone Kane had just humiliated without knowing who he was. Judge Morrison came back after lunch. In the matter of People versus Terrence Williams, this court finds the defendant guilty on all counts. Terrence's mother started sobbing. Terrence dropped his head. Coleman closed her file, defeated. Kane checked his watch. 1:45. 15 minutes to get to courtroom 4. He had no idea he was walking into the last 15 minutes of his career. 2 hours before Kane's insult, Judge James Carter sat in his office reviewing the afternoon schedule. The room was perfectly organized. Law books lined the shelves. Case files sat in stacks with colored tabs. Everything was planned and deliberate. On his desk sat a framed photo of Carter with 3 Supreme Court justices at his swearing-in ceremony. A Harvard Law diploma hung on the wall. Behind him, a newspaper clipping read, Carter appointed youngest federal judge in state history, then mysteriously steps down. His assistant, Maria Gonzalez, walked in with folders and coffee. Judge, the Kane hearing is at 2 p.m. Are you sure you want to handle this yourself? His union representative is very aggressive. Carter didn't look up from his papers. How many complaints are there? 14 formal ones. Probably 50 informal ones that never got documented. And none of them stuck. His captain buried them all. Captain Howren retired 6 months ago with a full pension. Carter leaned back in his chair. I've read everything. The statistics, the body camera failures, the medical reports that don't match his stories. 12 citizens filed this motion because the system failed them. Maria set the coffee down. This isn't revenge, right? If his attorney thinks you have personal bias, this could all fall apart. This is accountability, not revenge. Carter picked up a wooden gavel. It had an inscription that read, Justice delayed is justice denied. It was a gift from his mentor, Judge Lorraine Washington. 8 months ago, Carter said quietly, I saw Kane harass a 16-year-old kid at a bus stop. The kid was doing nothing wrong. Had headphones on, just waiting. Kane demanded ID, searched his backpack. I stepped in and identified myself as an attorney. Kane looked at me, black man in jeans, and told me to mind my business unless I wanted to be arrested for obstruction. When he saw my card said federal court, he didn't apologize. He just walked away. You filed a complaint, which went nowhere. Captain Howren sent a form letter. 3 weeks later, I requested leave from federal court. Your colleagues thought you were crazy, Maria said. A federal appointment is for life. I'd been reviewing appeals from this area for 2 years. I saw a pattern. Cases overturned for evidence tampering. Convictions thrown out when witness statements didn't match footage. At the center of everything, one precinct, one unit, one detective. Marcus Kane. I came here to fix a broken system. Kane's name just kept appearing. Carter opened a thick folder. It was a study done by the Coalition for Police Accountability. The lead researcher was Dr. Patricia Lane, a statistician who specialized in pattern analysis. The numbers told a clear story. Kane's arrest rate for people of color, 89%. His patrol area demographics, 52% people of color. The statistical probability this was random, less than 0.001%. The second section focused on body camera failures. 17 problems in 2 years. Department average 4. 87% of Kane's failures happened during arrests of people of color, specifically when force was used. A tech expert's conclusion, statistically impossible to be accidental. Kane either has incredibly bad luck or is deliberately making sure certain moments aren't recorded. The third folder contained videos from people's phones. 3 videos submitted with the motion. Carter had watched them dozens of times. In each one, Kane's official story didn't match what the cameras showed. Aggressive suspects appeared calm. Threatening gestures were people reaching for ID like they were told. Resisted arrest showed someone going limp while Kane kept using force. Maria interrupted his thoughts. Why are you entering through the public entrance? Why not wear your robes? Call it a field test. If Kane can't recognize authority when it doesn't look how he expects, that tells us everything. What if he doesn't show up? He'll show. Men like Kane always do. They think these hearings are just theater. Show up, deny everything, let the attorney talk, walk away clean. But this is a reckoning. If he recognizes you from 8 months ago, he won't. I was just another black man to him. Forgettable. Invisible. Carter walked through the courthouse hallways, taking the stairs instead of the judge's private elevator. He went through security like any regular visitor. Outside courtroom 7, he saw a woman crying on a bench. She was in her mid-50s, wearing her Sunday best even though it was Tuesday. Her hands held crumpled tissues. Her eyes were fixed on the closed courtroom doors. Terrence Williams's mother. Her son had just been convicted based on Kane's testimony. Their eyes met. Carter saw exhaustion in her face. The weight of fighting a system that wasn't designed to believe her. He wanted to tell her that things would change, that the detective who handcuffed her son would face consequences. But not yet. He gave her a small nod that said, "I see you. Hold on." She nodded back, not knowing who he was. Carter continued to courtroom 4. The bailiff, Jerome Matthews, was 35 years old, black, and had worked in the courthouse for 8 years. He saw Carter in regular clothes, and his eyes went wide. "Judge Carter, why are you—" Carter raised his hand. "Jerome, when Detective Kane arrives, let him enter before you announce court is in session. Don't warn him. Just let him react naturally." Jerome's confusion turned to understanding. "You're testing him. I'm giving him the opportunity to show who he is. If he can't recognize a judge without robes, if he can't see authority in someone who looks like me, we'll know what we're dealing with. If he disrespects you, then I'll have everything I need. This could get messy. His attorney will complain. I'm simply walking into my courtroom dressed professionally. If Kane sees a criminal instead of a colleague, that's his choice." Carter entered through the public entrance. He set his briefcase near the defense table, not behind it, but close enough to be unclear. He wanted to see what Kane would assume. The courtroom filled up. Coalition representatives, reporters, family members of people Kane had arrested. In the back corner sat a woman in police uniform, Detective Sarah Lane from the 15th Precinct. She wasn't supposed to be here. Carter stayed standing, looking at documents. The court reporter arrived. Maria slipped through the side door, keeping her face neutral. At 2:01 p.m., voices echoed from the hallway. Male voices, confident, laughing. Jerome glanced at Carter, who nodded slightly. The doors opened. Detective Marcus Kane walked in mid-conversation with Rodriguez. His tie was loose. His posture showed casual arrogance. His eyes landed on Carter. "What's a guy like you doing in a suit? Stole it, right?" Carter didn't move, didn't speak. He just held Kane's gaze with a calm that comes from knowing what happens next. Jerome's hand moved near his radio. The gallery held its breath. Rodriguez's face went pale. He'd seen Carter's photo in the courthouse directory. Kane kept talking. With every word, he buried himself deeper. The silence lasted 5 seconds. 5 seconds while Kane's brain tried to understand what his eyes were seeing. The man he'd just insulted walked past the defense table, past the prosecutor's table, up the steps to the judge's bench, and sat down in the judge's chair. Kane's face went from confident to confused to pale white. Rodriguez grabbed his arm and whispered urgently, "Marcus, that's Judge Carter." Too late. Carter adjusted the microphone. His voice was calm and professional. "Bailiff, please note for the record that Detective Marcus Kane entered this courtroom at 2:03 p.m. and immediately addressed this court with the following statement." He looked at his notes. Quote, "What's a guy like you doing in a suit? Stole it, right?" End quote. Jerome spoke formally. "Noted, Your Honor." Kane's attorney, Gerald Brennan, stood up fast. "Your Honor, Detective Kane clearly didn't recognize—" Carter raised one hand. Brennan stopped talking. "Mr. Brennan will get to objections later. Sit down." Carter's tone was clinical, like a surgeon. "This hearing concerns Motion 2024 CR 8847, filed by the Coalition for Police Accountability. They're requesting judicial review of Detective Kane's arrest record and disciplinary history." Brennan stayed standing. "Given what just happened, we move for immediate removal of the judge from this case." Motion denied. "Sit down." "You can't be both the victim and the—" Brennan, I am not the victim. I am the presiding judge. Detective Kane's statement will be entered as evidence of his pattern of making assumptions based on race. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt." Brennan sat down. Kane looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "This court will now hear testimony about Detective Kane's pattern of discriminatory policing. Ms. Moore, proceed." Jasmine Moore stood up. She was a black woman in her early 40s, wearing a sharp gray suit. She used to be a public defender. Now she ran the Coalition for Police Accountability. "Thank you, Your Honor. The Coalition presents 3 categories of evidence." She walked to the laptop connected to the projection screen. A chart appeared on the wall. Clean, professional, impossible to deny. First, statistical analysis. Detective Kane has made 247 arrests over 15 years. 89% involve people of color. His patrol area demographics: 52% people of color, 48% white. She paused to let that sink in. If arrests reflected actual crime rather than bias, the demographics would roughly match the neighborhood. Instead, we see a 37-point difference. Brennan stood up. "Objection. High crime areas naturally—" "I'll hear complete testimony before entertaining objections," Carter said. "Continue, Ms. Moore." "We consulted Dr. Patricia Lane, a statistician from State University. Her conclusion: the probability of this difference happening randomly is less than 0.001%. This is significant evidence of selective enforcement based on race." Whispers spread through the courtroom. Kane shifted in his seat. Second, body camera failures. Moore clicked to the next slide. Detective Kane reported 17 malfunctions in 2 years. The department averages 4. This alone might be coincidence. However, 15 of Kane's 17 failures happened during arrests of people of color. 87% happened at the exact moment force was applied. Carter leaned forward. Were these failures reported before or after the arrests? After, Your Honor. Kane's shift logs show he checked his equipment before every patrol and said it was working. Malfunctions were only reported after arrests were complete. Moore called her next witness. A South Asian man in his 30s approached with a tablet. After being sworn in, Moore established his credentials. His name was David Park, and he was a digital forensics analyst who specialized in body camera systems. Mr. Park, what did you find? Detective Kane uses the same body camera model as 43 other officers. The department failure rate is 6%. Kane's individual rate is 17%, nearly triple the average. Could heavy use explain this? No. Kane's patrol hours are actually below the precinct average. Is it possible to deliberately cause malfunctions that look accidental? Brennan objected. Carter allowed it as expert testimony. Park nodded. Yes, officers can disable recording while making it appear the camera malfunctioned. They just report technical problems afterward. You can only catch it through pattern analysis. And what does the pattern show? 17 malfunctions. 87% during force on people of color. That's not bad luck. That's deliberate. Kane's face went from pale to red. Moore returned to her presentation. Third, independent video evidence. The coalition has 3 videos from bystanders that contradict Detective Kane's sworn testimony. The first video played. A young black man standing outside a building. Kane's car pulled up. Kane got out aggressively. Kane's voice on video. What are you doing here? The young man, calm. I live here. Let me see ID. Why? I haven't done anything. ID now. Or we do this the hard way. The video showed the man slowly reaching for his wallet. Kane grabbed his arm, spun him around, and forced him against the wall. Moore paused it. Kane's arrest report says the suspect was loitering and refused to comply. It says the suspect made a sudden movement toward his waistband, forcing Kane to use restraint. The video tells a different story. The second video showed a traffic stop. A black woman in her mid-30s, hands visible on the steering wheel. Kane approached. License and registration. Can you tell me why you pulled me over? Her voice was steady. License and registration now. I'd like to know the reason. You were driving? Erratically. I was 5 miles under the speed limit, in the right lane. Kane's voice got louder. Are you arguing? Step out of the vehicle. I have a right to know. Step out, or I'll remove you. The video showed the woman asking for Kane's badge number. He opened her door and physically pulled her out. She didn't resist. Kane forced her to the ground anyway. Kane's report says the driver was erratic and non-compliant. The video shows a woman calmly asking legal questions. The courtroom was completely silent. Moore played the third video, the Terrence Williams arrest. The same arrest Kane had testified about this morning. But this video, shot from across the street, showed a wider view. Terrence standing on the corner checking his phone. Not nervous, not looking around. Just waiting. Kane's car appeared. Kane got out quickly, hand already on his baton. Kane's testimony this morning said he saw Terrence conducting a drug transaction. The video shows no transaction. It shows Terrence checking his phone. The video continued. Kane ordering Terrence down. Terrence complying immediately, on his knees, hands raised. Kane forcing him face down anyway, kneeling on his back. Then the critical moment. Kane's hand reaching into Terrence's jacket. The angle suggested Kane was putting something in, rather than taking something out. Moore paused on that frame. This video was submitted 3 days ago. The person who filmed it was initially afraid of retaliation, of not being believed. But when they heard about this hearing, they found courage. Ms. Moore, Carter asked, are you suggesting Detective Kane planted evidence? I'm suggesting this video contradicts sworn testimony. Combined with the statistics and equipment failures, it suggests Kane has been systematically violating civil rights for years. Brennan found his voice. Your Honor, These videos are out of context. We'll hear your response later. Carter turned to Kane. Detective, you've been listening for 20 minutes to testimony about your arrest patterns, camera failures, and videos that contradict your statements. Any response? Kane stood, his face flushed. Your Honor, with respect, I've been a decorated officer for 15 years. I've put dangerous criminals behind bars. These statistics are cherry-picked to make me look bad. I follow protocol. I enforce the law. If people just complied, none of this would happen. Sit down, Detective. Kane sat. 15-minute recess. When we return, I want to hear from any other witnesses. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Court came back into session 14 minutes later. The courtroom had filled even more. Word had spread through the courthouse that something big was happening. More reporters, more police officers, more families who'd filed complaints that went nowhere. Brennan stood immediately. Your Honor, we again request you remove yourself from this case. Your reaction to Detective Kane's greeting shows personal bias. Motion denied. Would you like to know why? You can't be both the offended party and the judge. I'm not the offended party. I'm the presiding judge. But let's address your concern directly. Carter pulled a file from under the bench. You claim bias. Let's look at my record. He opened it. 12 years on the bench, 847 cases involving law enforcement. I've ruled in favor of police in 64% of justified force cases. I've dismissed frivolous complaints. I've given maximum sentences to cop killers. Should I continue? Brennan hesitated. Your Honor, that's exactly the point. You claim bias. I'm proving I'm pro-law enforcement. I'm anti-corruption. If you can't tell the difference between those two things, that's your problem, not mine. The gallery stirred. Counselor, do you know where I worked before this appointment? No, Your Honor. Federal District Court Civil Rights Division. Each word landed with weight. Before that, 6 years with the Department of Justice, prosecuting police misconduct. Before that, I clerked for Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I wrote a legal brief that reformed use of force standards in 3 states. Brennan's face went slack. I literally wrote the manual on identifying discriminatory policing patterns. It's used in 7 states for training internal affairs investigators. So when you say I'm biased, what you're actually saying is that I'm qualified. Exceptionally qualified. Light applause broke out. Carter's gavel came down once. Order. But he let the moment breathe. Kane looked like he'd been hit. Let's also address why I'm here. 8 months ago, I left federal court for this local appointment. My colleagues thought I was crazy. Federal is a lifetime position. Local court is traffic tickets and small claims. He paused, looking directly at Kane. But I requested this assignment. For 2 years, I'd been reviewing appeals from this area. Cases overturned for evidence tampering, convictions thrown out, camera failures during force incidents, all centered on one precinct, one detective. Complete silence. I didn't come here to target you, Detective. I came to fix a broken system. You're just the most obvious symptom. Carter's voice stayed calm. Motion denied. Sit down. A voice came from the back. Your Honor, may I speak? Detective Sarah Lane stood up. She was white, mid-30s, in uniform from the 15th Precinct. You're not on the witness list, Carter said. I know, but I need to say something. Carter nodded. Come forward. Lane walked to the front, facing Kane. I've worked with Kane for 4 years. I filed 2 complaints about racial profiling and excessive force. Both were buried by Captain Howard. I was told if I kept pushing, I'd face payback. I'd never make detective. I'd get desk duty forever. Her voice shook, but kept going. I'm here because I've watched Kane target people for being black, for driving nice cars, for wearing suits, for existing. I've watched him lie in reports. I've watched him plant evidence, and I've watched the system protect him. Kane half stood. That's a lie. Sit down, Carter said sharply. Lane turned to Carter. When I heard you'd taken this case, I looked up your background. Your Justice Department work. I knew if anyone could stop him, it was you. Everything in those videos, those statistics, it's all true, and I have proof. Are you willing to provide a sworn statement? Yes, and I have documentation. Copies of my complaints before they were buried. Text messages from other officers, audio from my body camera that I saved before it could disappear. She pulled out a small drive. It's all here. The gallery erupted. Brennan looked sick. Kane went white as paper. Carter took the drive. We'll review this evidence. Detective Lane, you'll be contacted for formal testimony. He turned to Brennan. Do you still think I'm unqualified? Brennan said nothing. Then we'll continue. Detective Kane, take the stand. Kane looked at Brennan, who gave a reluctant nod. As Kane stood, his hands shook. For 15 years, he'd been the one asking questions, the one in control, the one everyone believed. Now the person asking questions had literally written the book on taking down officers exactly like him. Kane took the witness stand like a man walking to his doom. Carter didn't rush. He let the silence build. When he finally looked up, his voice was almost casual. Detective Kane, when you walked into this courtroom today, what did you see? Kane swallowed hard. Your Honor, I made a mistake. I apologize. That wasn't my question. What did you see? I saw someone near the defense table. No. What did you see before that? Before location? Before context? What was the very first thing you saw? Kane's jaw tightened. A black man. And you assumed? I assumed incorrectly. You assumed a black man in a courtroom must be a defendant. Why? Brennan stood. Objection, relevance. Overruled. This goes to pattern and practice. Answer, detective. Kane shifted. It was a mistake. You were near the defense table. I was 10 feet from the defense table carrying a briefcase in professional clothes. But you saw my skin first. You saw my skin only, correct? The courtroom was dead silent. Detective? Yes. Carter pulled up Kane's arrest records on the screen. Of your 247 arrests, how many involved people in professional clothes? I don't have that memorized. I do. 7. All 7 were people of color. None were white. In 5 cases, charges were dropped for lack of evidence. Do you see a pattern? That's cherry-picking. Is it? Carter displayed arrest reports on the screen. Report 2021-47893. Suspect dressed too well for the neighborhood. Report 2022-1204. Wearing expensive jewelry inconsistent with area demographics. Report 2023-56021. Acting suspicious in business attire. He paused. What is suspicious about business clothes? Those were high crime areas. So black people in suits in black neighborhoods are suspicious. Explain that logic to me. Kane had no answer. The cross-examination continued for 20 more minutes. Carter systematically dismantled every defense, every excuse, every justification. He showed language patterns. He compared reports side by side. He played the videos again, pausing on key moments. Finally, Carter leaned forward. Detective Kane, when you walked into this courtroom today, you saw a black man and assumed he was powerless. That assumption has governed your entire career. You've confused compliance with respect, fear with order, authority with justice. Today you learned the difference. His voice stayed steady. I don't take pleasure in this. A good cop is valuable. But you were never a good cop. You were a man in uniform who used the law as a weapon against people who looked different. And you did it because the system let you. Kane's face showed pure humiliation and rage. Carter addressed the full courtroom. This case isn't unusual. It's a symptom of a bigger problem. To every officer watching, the standard isn't perfection. It's accountability. Do your job with integrity and courts will support you. Do it with bias, and eventually you'll stand before someone who won't look away. He turned back to Kane. Based on the evidence presented today, this court makes the following orders. Detective Marcus Kane, you are suspended from duty without pay, effective immediately pending full internal affairs investigation. Your badge and weapon will be given to the bailiff before you leave this courtroom. Kane stood. You can't. I have rights. You have the same rights as every person you've arrested. Sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. Kane sat, his face burning. Second, this court orders a complete review of all cases involving Detective Kane for potential wrongful convictions. Third, this court refers Detective Kane to the District Attorney for criminal investigation into perjury and evidence tampering. Fourth, this court refers this matter to the State Attorney General for civil rights investigation. Terrence Williams's mother started crying with relief. Fifth, in the matter of People versus Terrence Williams, this court immediately vacates that conviction based on newly discovered evidence of false testimony. Mr. Williams is to be released immediately. The gallery erupted. People stood and clapped. Carter let it go for 5 seconds, then his gavel came down. Order! The room went quiet. Finally, based on Detective Kane's threatening approach to this bench during recess, his documented history of intimidation, and his contemptuous behavior, I find him in criminal contempt of court. Carter's voice was ice cold. Bailiff, place Detective Kane under arrest. The courtroom froze. Jerome approached with handcuffs. Kane's face showed shock, disbelief, fury. You're arresting me? Carter's expression didn't change. You taught me the rule today, Detective. When you see a black person in a courtroom, assume they're a criminal. By your own logic, you're under arrest. The irony hit like thunder. Jerome put handcuffs on Kane's wrists, the same handcuffs Kane had used on hundreds of people. The metal clicked closed. The gallery watched in silence, then scattered applause that grew louder. Carter's gavel came down. Order, this is a courtroom, not a circus. But he allowed himself the smallest smile, the first emotion he'd shown all day. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell one final time. 3 months later, Detective Marcus Kane was convicted of perjury, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. He got 4 years in prison. 23 of his convictions were overturned. Terrence Williams walked free that same day. Judge Carter returned to federal court but continued consulting on police accountability cases nationwide. His ruling was used in 3 states as legal precedent. Congress invited him to testify about reform. Detective Sarah Lane was promoted to lead the reform task force. The system didn't change overnight, but it started moving, and once it started, it was hard to stop. Sometimes the person you underestimate is just waiting for the right moment to speak. Justice wasn't blind that day. Justice had its eyes wide open, and justice saw everything.